Picture this. It's October 14th, 1066. Two massive armies are clashing on a hillside in Sussex. By the time the sun sets, a king is dead, an entire dynasty is over, and the future of England? Well, it's been changed forever. So, let's get right into it and break down one of the most important days in history, the Battle of Hastings.
I mean, how can just one day, one single battle, totally redefine a nation's destiny? It's a question historians have chewed on for, well, centuries. Because this wasn't just some squabble over a crown. No, this was a massive clash of cultures that would literally forge a brand new identity for England. As you're about to see, the stakes could not have been higher.
So where does a story like this even begin? Well, like so many huge conflicts throughout history, it all kicked off with a classic power vacuum. Okay, so back in January of 1066, King Edward the Confessor dies. And here's the kicker. He's childless, no heir. That single fact just plunged the entire kingdom into chaos and uncertainty. It basically set the stage for this huge, monumental struggle for power. You could say England was officially up for grabs.
And when there's an empty throne, you know the ambitious are going to come out of the woodwork. It was staggering, really. 3 incredibly powerful men stepped forward, and each one was absolutely convinced the crown was theirs. First, you've got Harold Godwinson. He's the most powerful earl in England, and the English council pretty much immediately elects him king. Then there's William, the Duke of Normandy. He insists that the old king, Edward, had promised him the throne. And finally, rounding out our trio, is Harald Hardrada, the honestly terrifying king of Norway, who's basing his claim on some old Viking deal.
So for our new King Harold, there was zero time to celebrate. I mean, none. He was immediately thrown into the absolute worst-case scenario. Not one, but 2 full-scale invasions, coming from 2 different directions at pretty much the exact same time. Talk about a nightmare. And you just can't overstate how relentless the pace of events was. It was just bang, bang, bang. So in late September, Harold has to literally sprint his army north to fight Harald Hardrada. He actually wins this huge, decisive victory. But get this, just 3 days later, William of Normandy lands his army way down on the south coast. The pressure on this one guy, on Harold, must have been absolutely immense. Now, Harold's victory up at Stamford Bridge against the Norwegians, it was nothing short of stunning. I mean, a truly incredible win, but it was what you'd call a Pyrrhic victory. He defeated one invasion, sure, but his army was left totally battered, exhausted, and weakened. And this was happening at the exact moment the second and arguably bigger threat was just arriving on his doorstep. So the second Harold gets the news that William has landed, he has no choice. Absolutely none. He has to turn his exhausted, battered army right back around and start this desperate, frantic race south again, all the way down the length of the country. And let's just pause on that number for a second. 200 miles. Can you imagine? That's the grueling distance these weary soldiers had to march, on foot after already fighting a massive battle, to go face a completely fresh and well-equipped Norman army. It's just unbelievable. And they moved with incredible speed, which really is a testament to their discipline. The whole plan was to do it again. Catch William completely by surprise, just like they did to the Norwegians up north. But this time, it didn't work. Norman scouts spotted them. And just like that, the element of surprise was gone. And so here we are, the morning of October 14th. The 2 armies are finally facing each other. But this wasn't just going to be a battle of men. Oh no, this was a battle of ideas, a clash of military philosophies, a true showdown of tactical styles. So, on one side, you've got the English. They're fighting completely on foot, using this incredible defensive formation called the shield wall. I mean, think of it as a nearly impenetrable barrier of interlocked shields and spears. And their deadliest weapon? The terrifying 2-handed Danish axe. Then, on the other side, you have the Normans. They're bringing a much more modern, combined arms approach. They've got archers to soften up the enemy, infantry to get in close, and, this is the big one, armored knights on horseback to deliver that final decisive blow. And for hours, the English strategy worked perfectly. They were perched up on a high ridge, and that shield wall just would not break. Norman arrows? Pretty much useless. They were just bouncing off shields or flying harmlessly over their heads. And the Norman knights, charge after charge after charge, they all failed to break that English line. It got so bad for the Normans that at one point a rumor even started spreading that William himself had been killed, which, you can imagine, caused total panic in their ranks. But here's the thing. William was a very, very clever and experienced commander. He saw how disciplined the English were, and he realized he had to change things up. So he decided to use a really risky but potentially devastating tactic. It was something his Normans had practiced and perfected. Okay, so here's how the trap worked. The Norman cavalry would charge the shield wall, and then, all of a sudden, they'd turn and pretend to flee in a panic. Now, some of the less experienced English soldiers, they saw this, they smelled victory, and they broke from the safety of the shield wall to chase them down. This was a fatal mistake, because the second those English soldiers were exposed out in the open, the Norman cavalry would just whip back around and cut them to pieces. And they pulled this deadly trick again and again throughout the afternoon. So, as dusk starts to fall, and remember, they've been fighting brutally for almost a full day now, the battle is still hanging in the balance. The English shield wall is definitely thinner, but it's still holding on. And then, it happened. The moment that would decide everything. It's captured in this simple, almost chilling inscription on the famous Bayeux Tapestry. Sometime in the chaos of those final desperate assaults, King Harold Godwinson was killed.
But how? How did he actually die? Well, the most famous story, the one everyone knows, is that he was struck by a stray arrow right in the eye. But other accounts from the time suggest he was actually cut down by a group of Norman knights. The truth is, we'll probably never know for sure. But in the end, the result was the same. The death of their king, that was the final blow. Without their leader, the English army just fell apart. They were demoralized, they lost all their cohesion, and that legendary shield wall, the one that had held strong for so many hours, it finally broke. The battle, well, it turned into a rout.
That's around the number of English soldiers who were killed on that field. Just think about that. The cost of this one defeat was absolutely catastrophic. The very core of England's warrior class just wiped out in a single day. And it all happened so fast after that. Just 2 months later, on Christmas Day, the Norman duke who had gambled absolutely everything on this one invasion, he completed his conquest. He was crowned King of England in Westminster Abbey, and he would become known, of course, as William the Conqueror, ushering in a whole new era of Norman rule that would transform England's language, its culture, its politics, forever.
And that really leaves us with one final fascinating question, doesn't it? What if? What if just a few tiny moments had gone differently? If that arrow had missed its mark, or if those English soldiers had just held their discipline and stayed in formation. It's an incredible reminder that sometimes the entire destiny of a nation can truly hang on the events of a single day.